Footballers are quite the human beings, incredibly talented with the ability to do unimaginable things with the ball, but some of them are given undue credit and value to their skills. They receive undeserved praise which in truth should not be given, from penalty merchants to sideways pass specialists, from 100 million euros flops to Ballon d'Or controversies. Here are the 20 most overrated players of all time who fooled the entire football world. At number 20, we have the supposedly legendary striker Didier Drogba, who has been living off reputation for far too long. The Ivorian was hailed as one of the Premier League's greatest strikers, but strip away the hype and you'll find numbers that don't add up. Drogba managed an average of just 11 goals and 7 assists per season in the Premier League. 11, that's barely better than some midfielders. For someone who played for Chelsea during their golden era, those numbers are shockingly mediocre. His Champions League record is even worse, a rate of 0.47 goals per game. Gabriel Jesus, Cavani, and Mario Gomez all have better averages than the so-called big game player. Yes, he scored in finals, but what about the other 37 games per season? He'd disappear for months, then pop up with a crucial goal, and suddenly everyone forgot about his invisible performances. The media loved the narrative of the clutch performer, but consistent performers don't take holidays for 3/4 of the season, and when it mattered most for his country, the 2006 African Cup of Nations final, he completely vanished, helping Ivory Coast lose a final they should have won. Now that Salah has dethroned him as the Premier League's highest scoring African, Drogba's achievements look even more questionable. One-trick pony who mastered the art of showing up only when cameras were rolling. From strikers who showed up only for cameras to midfielders who showed up only for Instagram, Paul Pogba's career is a masterclass in unfulfilled potential. The French midfielder was supposed to be Manchester United's midfield maestro, the player who would control games and dictate tempo. Instead, he controlled headlines and dictated transfer rumors. 105 million euros for a player who spent more time thinking about his next haircut than his next pass. Pogba had everything: height, strength, technical ability, and a left foot that could ping balls anywhere on the pitch. But football isn't played in highlight reels, and Pogba never understood that basic concept. His 6-year spell at United was overshadowed by inconsistency, injuries, documentaries, transfer requests, and off-field drama. He was voted the Premier League's most overrated player, and frankly, it wasn't even close. One week he'd score a screamer against Leeds, the next week he'd lose the ball 15 times against Burnley. You never knew which Pogba would show up. The worst part? Both Juventus and United played better football without him. His doping suspension cost him nearly 2 full years. His last game was September 2nd, 2023 against Empoli. Now at 32, he's signed a 2-year contract with AS Monaco, still trying to prove he's more than just a social media sensation with a football contract. Time will tell if age and adversity have finally taught him what talent alone never could. From social media sensations to supposed Ballon d'Or winners, Rodri's 2024 Golden Ball triumph has to be the most controversial individual award in football history. The Spanish midfielder beat Vinicius Jr. to the prize, sparking such outrage that Real Madrid boycotted the entire ceremony. But honestly, maybe they had a point. Rodri won the Ballon d'Or with just 1,170 points, only 41 more than Vinicius's 1,129. That's the smallest margin in recent memory, and it tells you everything about how questionable this decision really was. Even Cristiano Ronaldo called Vinicius being snubbed unfair, and when CR7 is defending a Real Madrid player against a Man City 1, you know something's seriously wrong. The truth is, Rodri looks world-class because Guardiola's system makes defensive midfielders appear like tactical geniuses. Remove that City framework and you have a player who passes sideways, occasionally scores a long-range goal, and gets praised for doing the bare minimum. His importance is massively overstated. City average only 1.90 points per game without him, but that says more about their lack of depth than his individual brilliance. His ACL injury in September 2024 was supposed to prove how irreplaceable he is, but City's struggles say more about poor squad planning than Rodri's genius. He's returning to training now, but the damage to his inflated reputation is already done. System player disguised as a superstar. From system players to system defenders, Gerard Piqué's reputation has been built on playing alongside genuine legends rather than his own defensive brilliance. The Spanish Spanish center back was hailed as one of the greatest ball-playing defenders of his generation, but critics have always questioned whether he was actually that good individually. Piqué was error-prone defensively and constantly criticized for his inconsistency and lack of pace. When you're playing next to Carles Puyol, in front of the greatest goalkeeper-defender partnership, and behind the most dominant midfield in football history, it's pretty easy to look world-class. Remove those safety nets, and you get a defender who made basic positional errors that cost his team crucial goals. Even pundits couldn't put him on the same level as Ramos or Puyol, and they were right. His ball-playing ability was constantly praised, but as one critic perfectly put it, to be a good defender, you need to know the basics of defending first. If you can pass the ball, that is a bonus. Piqué had the bonus, but often forgot the basics. His off-field business interests and celebrity lifestyle seemed more important than football in his later years. Spain's defense actually improved when they moved away from him in his final seasons. He retired at 35 in November 2022, probably knowing that without Barcelona's system protecting him, his defensive frailties would be fully exposed. Great passer, average defender. While Piqué rode the coattails of legendary teammates, his midfield partner Xavi has an even more questionable legacy as Barcelona's supposed tiki-taka mastermind. The Spanish midfielder was hailed as a tactical genius, the brain behind the greatest football philosophy ever created, but his recent Barcelona coaching disaster proved he was more passenger than driver. Xavi played in the greatest midfield trio ever with Iniesta and Busquets, surrounded by Messi in the greatest Barcelona team ever under Pep Guardiola. Strip away those world-class players and what's left? A sideways pass merchant who looked good because genuine superstars were doing the heavy lifting around him. His coaching tenure was a complete embarrassment. Sacked in May 2024 after a trophy-less season, his team lacked ideas when they reached the final third. The same problems that plagued their entire 2023-24 campaign. Individual mistakes, conceding under pressure, and failing to kill off games became their trademark. The board even convinced him to stay just a month before sacking him. That's how bad things got. Even Pep Guardiola distanced himself from tiki-taka, saying, "I loathe all that passing for the sake of it." If the master himself is criticizing the philosophy, what does that say about Xavi's supposed genius? His coaching failure exposed what many suspected. He was a system player disguised as a system creator. All possession, no progression. While Xavi's sideways passes fooled millions, Emiliano Martinez's mind games have somehow convinced people he's a world-class goalkeeper. The Argentine shot stopper has built his entire reputation on penalty shootout antics and controversial behavior that would make a WWE wrestler blush. Martinez spent years warming Arsenal's bench, which should tell you everything about his supposed world-class abilities. When he finally got his chance, he had a decent run, but one good season doesn't make you the next Buffon. His move to Aston Villa was supposed to prove his quality, but what we've seen instead is a goalkeeper more interested in theatrical performances than actual shot stopping. His World Cup penalty antics were labeled as cheating by Simon Jordan, and frankly, he had a point. Martinez's mind games might work on nervous penalty takers, but they've also made him the most hated man in football, according to former France defender Adil Rami. Even PSG legend Bernard Lama called him annoying and stated he's not a great goalkeeper. The most embarrassing moment? His bizarre own goal against Liverpool that made embarrassing piece of Premier League history. He's still at Aston Villa, still pulling his antics, and still somehow being called world-class, despite being more entertainer than goalkeeper. All theatrics, questionable fundamentals. From penalty antics to one-goal wonders, Mario Götze proves that scoring in a World Cup final doesn't automatically make you a footballing genius. The German midfielder has been living off that 113th minute goal against Argentina for over a decade, and frankly, it's getting embarrassing. Götze was hailed as the golden boy of German football, the boy wonder with special talent who was supposed to dominate European football for years. But Felix Magath hit the nail on the head when he said Götze's World Cup winning goal has skewed perceptions of his importance to the Germany team. One moment of magic shouldn't define an entire career, yet that's exactly what happened. His career after 2014 reads like a cautionary tale. Despite being in his prime years, he was excluded from Germany's 2018 World Cup squad when he should have been leading the line. Even Borussia Dortmund's CEO admitted that being a World Cup winner has weighed him down in the intervening years. The pressure and expectations were too much for someone whose actual performances never matched the hype. Now he's at Eintracht Frankfurt, successfully rebuilding his career after overcoming metabolic issues. But let's be honest, he's 32 and playing as a quarterback in a deeper role because he can't keep up with elite-level attacking midfield anymore, living proof that one goal doesn't make a legend. While Götze lived off one magical moment, Nicolas Anelka somehow convinced the football world he was elite, despite being a walking controversy machine. If you look at the clubs he played for, Arsenal, Real Madrid, Chelsea, Liverpool, you'd think he was one of the greatest strikers ever. The reality? He was football's ultimate underachiever. Anelka was labeled a prolific journeyman, protest instigator, and controversy magnet, and that pretty much sums up his entire career. Arsenal believed greatness was simply a matter of time when they first signed him, but he appeared to lack the maturity for first-team responsibility. Even at 19, the warning signs were flashing brighter than a police car. At Real Madrid, he was suspended for 45 days after publicly criticizing the team and teammates, claiming they treated him like a dog. At Chelsea, he was banned from the Christmas party and training ground car park after quarreling with Andre Villas-Boas. During the 2010 World Cup, he refused to apologize for verbally abusing coach Raymond Domenech in the dressing room. Classy stuff. His controversial quenelle celebration at West Bromwich earned him a 5-game suspension and £80,000 fine, proving that even in his 30s, he still couldn't keep his mouth shut. He felt underappreciated throughout his career, but maybe that's because talent without professionalism equals mediocrity. All ability, zero application. If Anelka had talent but no discipline, Blay Matuidi had discipline but no talent, yet somehow convinced the football world that running around a lot equals world-class ability. The French midfielder built his entire reputation on work rate and defensive contribution, but when you strip away the fancy stats about distance covered, you're left with a player who offered very little creativity or genuine quality. Matuidi was the ultimate water carrier, was great at doing the dirty work but hopeless when it came to actually creating or scoring goals. At PSG, he was criticized for lacking that creative spark in the final third, managing just 2 assists in 3 seasons. 2! That's fewer assists than some goalkeepers manage in their careers. Even PSG coach Unai Emery tagged him as yesterday's man when he dropped him in 2016 to 17, and the Spanish coach knew exactly what he was seeing. Yes, Matuidi won 16 domestic honors at PSG, but let's be honest, you could put a traffic cone in that PSG midfield and they'd still win League One. His France career followed the same pattern. Lots of running, minimal impact. He retired in September 2023 after 699 club appearances, and the football world barely noticed. That tells you everything about his supposed importance to the game. For someone who was considered essential by his coaches, his creative output was embarrassingly poor. All engine, no steering wheel. Talking about players who chose money over legacy, Hulk's career perfectly illustrates how to waste world-class talent for a quick payday. His name and superhuman physique were enough to strike fear into any defender, but when it came to actual elite-level performance, the Brazilian was more incredible disappointment than incredible Hulk. Hulk had genuine quality at Porto, winning 10 major titles including the 2010-11 UEFA Europa League and being crowned the league's top scorer. But then came the moment that defined his career, choosing a €60 million move to Zenit St. Petersburg over elite European clubs. The transfer created unrest among his Zenit teammates who were unsatisfied with his massive salary and wanted their own contracts renegotiated. His move to Shanghai SIPG was even worse for his legacy. He reportedly signed a deal worth £320,000 per week, facing plenty of criticism for putting a big payday ahead of competing at the highest level. Sure, he scored 69 goals in 126 games in China, but that's like being the fastest runner in a walking competition. Now at 39, he's back at Atletico Mineiro, still showing flashes of his ability, but as a shadow of what he could have been. He had offers from England, Spain, and Italy throughout his career, but chose the easy money instead. All power, no ambition, the perfect recipe for a wasted career. While Hulk chose money over ambition, João Felix represents something even worse. A player who had the football world at his feet, but threw it all away through petulance and poor decisions. The Portuguese forward was supposed to be the next Cristiano Ronaldo, but instead became the next expensive flop. At just 19, Atletico Madrid broke their transfer record with a staggering €126 million deal, the fourth most expensive transfer in football history. For that price, you'd expect the next Messi, but what Atletico got was a moody teenager who couldn't handle the pressure. He had one good season at Benfica and suddenly everyone thought he was the Messiah. His Atletico career was a disaster from day one. A series of muscle injuries prevented him from making any significant impact, and instead of fighting through adversity, he sulked his way out of the club. His loan spells at Chelsea and Barcelona were equally underwhelming. He ranked poorly for ball recoveries and failed to contribute a single assist during his Chelsea stint. That's right, 0 assists in the Premier League. Now he's at Al Nassr with Cristiano, probably learning from the player he was supposed to replace. His market value has crashed from €126 million to just €20 million. That's some spectacular depreciation. All hype, no substance, the perfect modern footballer. Then we have the Dutch wonderkid, a player who was supposed to be Manchester United's answer to their left-wing problems. €34 million and endless hype later, and Old Trafford was left wondering what they'd actually bought. Memphis arrived with flashy skills, a flashy car, and an even flashier social media presence. But when it came to delivering on the pitch, complete ghost mode. In 18 months at United, he managed just 7 goals in 53 appearances. 7! That's worse than some defenders. Louis van Gaal thought he was getting the next Robin, but instead got a player who cared more about his Instagram followers than his first touch. After his United disaster, he went to Lyon, where he scored 76 goals in 178 games. Decent numbers, but that's League One, where even average players look world-class. Then came Barcelona, where he struggled for consistency, managing only 14 goals in 42 appearances. After Barca, he joined Atletico Madrid in 2023, but even there he couldn't cement his place. Now he's at Corinthians in Brazil, a far cry from the European elite he was supposed to conquer. The lad had all the tools: pace, power, and flashy skills. But his decision-making was atrocious, and his end product disappointing. For someone who was hyped as the future of Dutch football, he's been more social media sensation than football superstar. Speaking of players who had all the talent but wasted it, Mario Balotelli takes the crown for unrealized potential. The Italian was supposed to be the next big thing, a physical striker with pace, power, and an eye for goal. But instead of football headlines, he made tabloid headlines. Balotelli had everything you'd want in a striker, but his mentality was his biggest enemy. Remember the "why always me" shirt after scoring against United? That pretty much sums up his career. More famous for antics than actual football. At City, he scored some crucial goals, but Mancini was constantly dealing with his off-field drama. The fireworks incident at his house, the training ground bust-ups, the bizarre press conferences, it was a circus. His moves to AC Milan showed glimpses of brilliance, but consistency was never his forte. Liverpool was a complete disaster. Just 4 goals in 28 games. Then came spells at Nice, Marseille, Brescia, Monza, and now Genoa. His career has been a series of what-ifs and second chances. Mario had the physical tools to dominate any defense, but his attitude problems and lack of professionalism meant he never reached the heights everyone expected. All talent, no application. The perfect recipe for wasted potential. Mario's story of wasted talent brings us to another cautionary tale. Dele Alli's career trajectory is even more heartbreaking. The English midfielder burst onto the scene at Tottenham like a man possessed, scoring worldies and nutmegging defenders for fun. Everyone thought they were witnessing the birth of England's next superstar. How wrong they were. Between 2015 and 2018, Dele looked unstoppable. Those long-range thunderbolts, the cheeky flicks, the big game performances. He had it all. Spurs fans were convinced they had the next Frank Lampard on their hands. But then something changed. Between 2018 and 2021, his performances started to wane dramatically. Despite being given ample chances by multiple Spurs managers, Dele just couldn't recapture that early magic. The warning signs were there. His work rate dropped, his decision-making became erratic, and those trademark goals dried up completely. Mourinho tried to revive him, Conte gave him opportunities, but nothing worked. His loan move to Everton was supposed to be a fresh start, but even that ended in disappointment. After spells at Besiktas, he was on loan at Serie A club Como for the 2024/25 season, but they've already decided he's not not in their plans for 2025/26. Now he's searching for yet another club, a far cry from the 100 million pound rated wonderkid he once was. Sometimes early success can be the cruelest joke football plays. From players whose careers collapsed early to those who peaked too soon, James Rodriguez is the perfect example of living off one tournament for an entire decade. The Colombian had 6 magical weeks at the 2014 World Cup and has been dining out on that golden boot ever since. Real Madrid saw those highlight reels from Brazil and thought they were getting the next Kaká. 75 million euros later, and they realized they'd bought fool's gold. James looked spectacular in that white shirt during his first season, but even then the cracks were showing. He was too slow for elite football, couldn't defend, and his much-praised left foot was inconsistent when it mattered most. His loan spells at Bayern Munich were supposed to revive his career, but even the Germans couldn't unlock this special talent. Ancelotti tried, Heynckes tried, nothing worked. Then came Everton, where he had moments of brilliance but disappeared for months at a time. Al Rayyan in Qatar was next, followed by Olympiacos, then Sao Paulo, but his contract was terminated in July 2024 after struggling for playing time. Now he's at Club Leon in Mexico, still trying to prove he's more than a one-tournament wonder. For someone who was supposed to be the heir to Ronaldinho's throne, his career reads like a masterclass in how not to capitalize on early success. All sizzle, no steak. And if we're talking about players who never lived up to their price tags, Raheem Sterling deserves a special mention. The English winger was supposed to be Manchester City's crown jewel, the homegrown talent who would terrorize Premier League defenses for years. Instead, he became the poster boy for expensive mediocrity. At City, Sterling had his moments. That's undeniable. But for every crucial goal, there were 10 sitters missed, 10 simple passes overhit, and 10 occasions where he overcomplicated the simplest situations. Guardiola's system made him look world-class, but remove that tactical framework and you're left with a player who runs fast but thinks slow. His £50 million move to Chelsea was supposed to be his redemption arc. Instead, it became a disaster movie. Thomas Tuchel couldn't get the best out of him and neither could his successors. The fans quickly turned and his performances became so poor that he was shipped out on loan to Arsenal after just one season. Even at Arsenal, things haven't improved much. He was recently voted the Premier League's worst signing of the season with 40.7% of votes. Quite an achievement. Critics have called him the flop signing of the season with no future at Arsenal or Chelsea. For someone who was once valued at over £100 million, that's a spectacular fall from grace. Fast feet, slow brain. From one big money disaster to another attacking disappointments, Jadon Sancho proves that Bundesliga numbers mean absolutely nothing in real football. The English winger was supposed to be Manchester United's creative genius, the player who would unlock stubborn defenses and provide that missing spark. Instead, he unlocked a whole new level of transfer failure. £73 million for a player who couldn't handle Premier League intensity. Even accountants would struggle to make those numbers add up. Sancho arrived from Dortmund with incredible stats, but it turns out farming goals against German defenses isn't the same as facing Premier League defenders who actually know how to tackle. His work rate was questioned from day one, and his big game performances were non-existent. Then came the Erik ten Hag drama, an ill-timed and foolish public outburst that showed his mentality was as weak as his end product. The loan back to Dortmund was the ultimate embarrassment before being shipped off to Chelsea on loan for the 2024/25 season. Even at Stamford Bridge, he managed just 5 goals in 41 appearances before returning to United at the end of the season. Now he's back at Old Trafford, still trying to justify that astronomical price tag, while Roma circle like vultures. Speed without substance, potential without performance. The Bundesliga's greatest export scam. And finally, we reach our top 3 ultimate modern football scam. A World Cup winner who somehow convinced Chelsea to break Premier League transfer records for what's essentially an average midfielder with a shiny medal, £106.8 million, the most expensive signing in Premier League history. For a player who had one good tournament and a decent season with Benfica, that's some serious financial wizardry from Chelsea. Sure, he won the World Cup with Argentina, but so did 22 other players, and most of them didn't cost 9 figures. His Chelsea career started exactly as you'd expect from such an overpriced signing. 1 assist and 0 goals in his first 13 appearances of the 2024/25 season. World-class stuff. Even when his form improved under Maresca, finishing with 7 goals and 13 assists, the underlying numbers told a different story. He's been dribbled past 38 times this season, ranking him 4th worst behind Trent Alexander-Arnold. For a defensive midfielder, that's embarrassing. But wait, there's more. The racism controversy following Argentina's Copa America triumph showed his true character. His teammate Wesley Fofana called it uninhibited racism, and Chelsea had to launch an investigation into their own record signing. Nothing says world-class professional like cursing your season before it even begins. He's still at Stamford Bridge, still trying to justify that astronomical price tag, and still proving that World Cup medals don't automatically make you worth £100 million. The most expensive midfielder in history who plays like he's worth £10 million. And still on our countdown, we have Romeo Lavia. Proof that potential means absolutely nothing when you can't stay on the pitch for more than 5 minutes. The Belgian midfielder was supposed to be Chelsea's midfield solution, the young talent who would anchor their rebuild. Instead, he became their most expensive medical experiment. £58 million for a 20-year-old who had one decent season at Southampton. Only Chelsea could turn desperation into such financial madness. Lavia arrived at Stamford Bridge with all the hype of the next N'Golo Kanté, but what they got was a player who spends more time with the physios than on the training ground. His debut season was an unmitigated disaster, just 32 minutes of Premier League game time due to muscle, ankle, and hamstring injuries. 32 minutes! You could watch a Netflix episode and still have time left over. When he finally returned from one injury, he was immediately struck by another hamstring problem, keeping him out for another month. Even in the 2024/25 season, hamstring issues have kept him sidelined for prolonged spells. Yes, Maresca says we are a better team with Romeo when he's available, but that's like saying you're faster when you're not walking on crutches. For £58 million, Chelsea expected a midfield general, not a part-time player who treats injuries like a full-time hobby. All promise, no presents. While Lavia can't stay fit, Noni Madueke can't stay consistent, yet somehow convinced 2 Premier League giants to spend over £80 million combined on his potential. The English winger represents everything wrong with modern football valuations. Massive fees for minimal substance. Chelsea paid £28.5 million to PSV for a player who had decent numbers in the Eredivisie, but we all know how that league translates to Premier League quality. At Stamford Bridge, Madueke showed flashes of brilliance, but was more flash than consistent impact. His attitude problems became so obvious that Enzo Maresca dropped him from the squad because of his lack of killer instinct in games and poor training mentality. 11 goals and 5 assists in 45 appearances sounds decent until you realize that spread across an entire season for a supposed attacking threat. Even more telling, his inconsistent performances and frustrating decision-making made Chelsea happy to cash in when Arsenal came calling. Arsenal's £48.5 million bid with £3.5 million in add-ons was accepted faster than you could say overpriced winger. Now he's at the Emirates on a 5-year contract, still trying to prove he's worth the combined $80 million plus that 2 clubs have invested in his potential. At 23, he's running out of time to justify the hype. All pace, no product. The modern winger's curse. And there you have it, the 20 most overrated players who somehow fooled us all. Remember, this is purely for entertainment purposes and debate. Many of these players are actually decent and have achieved great things in their careers. We're just having some fun with the controversies and criticisms that follow them. What do you think? Did we get it right, or are we completely wrong? Let us know in the comments below. We love a good football debate. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more controversial football content that'll have you arguing with your mates.